Well, here's a big question in our world. Have officials in the U.S. and China actually been in talk over tariffs? There's been some mixed signaling recently. So you ask President Trump, and he's going to tell you he has spoken with Chinese President Xi Jinping, quote, numerous times. Those are his words. But he's been vague about whether he's spoken with him since the trade war broke out, the timing of it. In fact, Trump told Time magazine the Chinese president called him and the U.S. and China are in trade talks. Well, when asked moments ago when that happened, here's what the president had to say.
I'll let you know at the appropriate time. Let's see if we can make a deal.
Well, Beijing has denied any negotiations are underway and is holding firm, calling for the abolishment of unilateral tariffs. So CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady watching this closely. Kelly, it's good to see you there. In this environment, I'm reading that Apple is working to pivot away from China, sourcing iPhones out of China, now looking at sourcing them out of India. So what's the landscape there?
You know, this is really interesting because you just mentioned all of that back and forth with China, and really the signal that it's sending to businesses is uncertainty. And so that reporting from the Financial Times that Apple is looking to source its iPhones from China, or India rather than China. I mean, you think about it, 60 million of those are sold in the U.S. 80% of them are sourced in China. The fact that there is a 145% tariff on goods coming from China, but a 10% tariff on other countries while those trade deals are negotiated, it sends a signal to businesses that they need to go somewhere else. What I think is really interesting, though, about that report from the Financial Times is it indicates that businesses aren't necessarily looking to the United States to manufacture, which of course has been one of the signaled goals of these tariffs, but they are looking to other countries that they aren't going to see that very steep tariff as this sort of ongoing tension ratchets up with China. So, I kind of see that as, this is something that we're seeing from Apple. It's something that we're seeing from other companies as well. But the fact that they're looking to other countries versus in the U.S., it's still going to be cheaper to do that there versus the U.S. because they won't have that 145% tariff with China, Reed.
All right, so let's go to where the rubber meets the road, and really that's consumer sentiment. Right before we went to air, you flagged some new data coming in just moments ago. What is that telling us?
So consumer sentiment data, it shows how consumers are feeling about the economy, their finances, the labor market. I would characterize it as pretty bad, but not as bad as expected, which in this environment can be cause for sort of a mini sigh of relief. What we saw was an 8% drop in consumer sentiment from March. Now, it was better than expected because this data incorporates some surveying from after the White House paused those reciprocal tariffs on April 9th. And it actually would have caused a little bit of a relief in consumer sentiment, but like I said, still more negative than last month. I was really honing in, Reed, on the expectations index, because if you think about it, if consumers feel bad about where things are going, that might impact how they spend. We've seen a 32% drop since January. That is the steepest decline since the 1990 recession. And January is an important date because that is when this new administration took office. Inflation expectations in this report reached 6.5% over the next year. Again, doesn't mean consumers are going to be right, but it could impact how they spend. And Reed, I will tell you, it is impacting how businesses are looking at their outlook for 2025. We are right in the middle of earnings season. That is a very important thing here at the New York Stock Exchange.
Right.
We have heard from consumer companies like Chipotle and Pepsi, they're pulling their guidance because they are so uncertain about how that consumer is going to spend.
Well, and we also know, because you're reporting there live, stocks are on a 4-day winning streak. What led the charge there, Kelly?
I'd say two things. One, we have had some good earnings reports, especially from tech companies, but also that change in tone from the White House, a little bit of restraint versus what we have seen in previous weeks. That's really, investors were looking for optimism. Today, though, we're in the red on the Dow. We'll see where we end on a Friday. Fridays can always be a little bit of a roller coaster here, but overall a good week when it comes to stocks.
All right, buckle up your seatbelt, and we know you're watching it. Kelly O'Grady, always great to talk to you. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend, friend.